Oh my goodness, here we are. Like I said, my name is Kate Bingaman-Burt, and I'm sitting in my office at Portland State. And today, I am going to be talking with you all about my work, about sketchbooks, about zines, the risograph, drawing, documentation, consumerism. But first, I want to give a little context for me and what the heck is going on. I also think I might talk about my grandma. Who knows? Buckle up. We're here. Let's do this. So 20 years ago, I started teaching, and 16 years ago, I started teaching at Portland State University. And currently, I am the associate director of the School of Art and Design. And I'm also the head of the graphic design program here. We haven't started back up yet. We still have, this is my last week. And then next week, we have to do a bunch of meetings. And then the week after we start. So I still have like a little bit of summer left. So anyway, I'm going to enjoy it to its fullest. But that being said, when I'm not at school, you can find me here. This is Outlet. I opened Outlet 6 years ago. What is Outlet? Outlet is a community risograph print studio. It's an event space, a zine library, as well as my illustration studio. And for the folks in the chat or on Zoom, I'm going to pop some links in so you can go look at stuff, some fun second screen viewing and clicking around. And then what we've got going on here is another big thing that happened in my life 5 years ago. I had a child. I know, his name is Hank, and Hank rocks my world on the daily. And as you can see, I'm training him for future employment at Outlet. And then 4 years ago, I hired Leland Vaughn, who also rocks my world on the daily and is Outlet's full-time studio manager, as well as my official business partner and co-owner in all things printing and workshops and the other millions of things that we do at Outlet. And as we all know, 3 years ago, the pandemic shut everything down. So I love a good third space, and Outlet is such a good third space. So you might be like, what is a third space? Well, in theories of community work, a third space is a social place separate from the two main environments of home and the workplace. And although Outlet is my studio, I see it functioning for the community as an excellent third space. And during the pandemic, it really became so many dang spaces. It was a space for hosting our previously very, very, very in-person hands-on workshops, which we had to flip onto Zoom, okay? And it also was the headquarters for me, at least, where I produced all of the Portland State graphic design lectures and events, as well as classes. It's also a space for my illustration practice. And it's also a space for my personal practice, which revolves around the things that we buy and the emotions and stories behind our stuff. And it's also a space for producing and shipping our online print orders from artists all over the country. Outlet is a super active print shop. And we feel so honored to have been able to have printed for so many talented folks all over the place. And it was also a space for printing and distributing protest posters throughout the Portland community. And hundreds of people walked through our door to pick up posters to shout and share during the summer of 2020 and beyond. During the pandemic, we quickly realized that our mode of delivery really needed to change. After many panicked weeks, Leland and I flipped our in-person workshops to online workshops and made the announcement that we are open for virtual business. This is a really important point that I want to kind of underline here, is that Outlet is not a nonprofit. It is our job to make sure that it is also a functioning business. And we were very dedicated to not losing this place. And I want to kind of shout out to other artist-run community spaces. And we are grateful every day to have the opportunity within this setting to empower people and create space for community. Artist-run spaces are part of the bedrock of the culture of a place. And as rising rents and changing demographics threaten the viability of DIY spaces in cities across America, we feel the criticality of maintaining a community space as a political act. We maintain outlet in the spirit of and with inspiration from other community art spaces in the US and beyond, such as Amos Kennedy's Pile of Bricks print shop in Detroit, The Arm, which is a community letterpress print shop in New York City. Matter is a print shop and project space in Denver, Colorado, run by Rick Griffith and Deborah Johnson. We adore the Minneapolis Center for the Book, which is the largest independently run book art center in the United States. And of course, in the spirit of and as a complement to the Independent Publishing Resource Center, which is Portland's own radical community art space, which has been in operation since 1998. And I was a very active board member for 5 years. And now my co-owner and outlet is also an active board member currently, which is fantastic. We love having this connection. And I'm dropping those links in the chat too, if you all want to kind of investigate those spaces more. They're truly, truly wonderful. Leland and I are so proud to be part of the community of artist-run spaces. And we are very, very much looking forward to keeping Outlet open for an incredibly long time. If you find yourself in Portland, which I hope you do because it's a wonderful city, please come and visit us. We are open almost every day of the week. We started welcoming folks back in the space for in-person workshops, thank goodness, in September of 2021. And I started teaching back in person at Portland State in the winter of 2022. And I am so happy to be around people again. It feels so good to have made it through these last few years. A little bit about the history of Outlet. I mentioned that I opened it in 2017 with the intentions of having more of a public studio space, but I honestly had zero intentions of making it the full-time risograph print studio and online workshop machine that it is today. Pre-quarantine times, we would host a variety of events from book release parties to drawing parties to print parties, along with a wide variety of creative workshops from a wide variety of creative people. These are just some of the examples. I really, part of my practice, like looking over the last 20 years, like I started drawing about 17 years ago, but really the thing that has been most constant and the way that I make is making zines and organizing events. And I love that I have this space where I can continue to do that, organize these events. So we do tons of different workshops. We invite other people in to kind of share their passions and just love, again, having Outlet being a really lovely community third space. We offered, however, our first risograph workshop in August of 2017. And since then, we've had almost 2,000 risograph workshop students, both in real life and online, learn about this wonderfully quirky print process. You might be asking yourself, what the heck is a risograph? I'm still asking myself that question, honestly, but it is a wild and quirky stencil printer that looks like a mild-mannered photocopier, but it's truly an aggressive color and texture machine. Everything that is in the Spectre Gallery currently right now was made on my machines at Outlet. These are some images of the riso, what the drums look like, what the tubes of ink look like, some of our little zines that we put out for our workshops. This was my first riso. Her name was Barbara. Barbara is currently retired, but she was my first riso and the only riso for the first year of printing. So she holds a very special place in my heart. People make fan art about Barbara. Barbara has her own hashtag. Barbara's quite a queen, let me tell you what. Currently, we have 4 functioning risos in our space, along with a zine library, a ton of art supplies, and a huge collage resource library. Also, I highly recommend naming any inanimate objects that you work with on the daily that might frustrate you. It makes for a much more fun user experience if you personify them. Our Riso sisters' names are, along with Barbara, we have little Tina, We have Janet. We have Karita. We used to have Large Marge, who is dead, by the way. And Jolene. Jolene is no longer with us either. But again, it's very fun to name your machines, especially those that irritate you. So anyway, that's, if there's one thing that you take away from this, is to name your printers. It makes the whole experience so much better. Anyway, Outlet also has an upstairs. It's a very, very tiny loft that acts as the office for Leland and I, okay? So we basically kind of say, like, we've got business up top, party downstairs. We are the mullet of print shops in Portland, Oregon, okay? So this is my drawing table. This is me at my drawing table. And this drawing table also happens to be my most favorite object in the whole world. I am confident to say this. And that's actually a question that I get quite a bit, because I have been drawing objects for the last 20 years or so. People want to know if I have a favorite object. I do. It's this drawing table. It's my grandmother's drawing table. This is the drawing, my daily purchase drawing that I made of my grandmother's drawing desk when I had it shipped to me from Wisconsin on August 15th, 2012. She passed away earlier that year in April. And that was the one thing that I wanted to take. And a little bit about my grandma is, this is her at 23. This picture has always been part of the origin story of my grandmother, whose name is Nan Pollard. This picture pinpoints the moment she became a professional illustrator. This is a publicity still for her new book that she just published. It's this beautiful kind of concertina book about the circus that is spread out in front of her. And I absolutely love this photo because, again, she's got her first published book. And I also just love her dress. Like her top is a bunch of painter brushes and palettes. And then her like skirt is like an inverse of that. I just love that. I'm like, dress for the thing you want to be, you know? And grandma's like, I'm an illustrator and I'm wearing it. So anyway, it's very cool. But my grandmother has had an immense effect on both my aesthetic as well as my ethic and attitude too, my work ethic especially. She was a prolific children's book illustrator and drew over 1,000 titles during her 55-year career. She joyfully loved her work, and I really saw this, like her work was play and her play was work. She joyfully enjoyed the things that she did. She was busy all the time, but it was because she chose to be doing those things. And when something was kind of going south, she's like, not doing that anymore. So it was a really good kind of role model to have as I was growing up. Along with that, I have many good memories of being in her studio, watching her work, asking her a million dumb questions, and secretly hoping to catch fumes from her spray fixative, which was super toxic, but smelled really good. Anyway, we don't need to talk about that, but it was pretty great. She was also very organized and structured, and she always talked about how fortunate she was to be an illustrator. People really loved working with her. She had a joyful public personality and a hilariously filthy private sense of humor. And I learned many, many, many bad words from her, which I still appreciate to this day. I also love looking for her books during my many trips to thrift stores, and occasionally I find them. It's kind of like grandma is saying, hey, Kate from the beyond. And I really love that. I found one just 2 weeks ago when I was with Hank, searching through things, and I'm like, your great grandma Nancy drew this. And it was just kind of a fun thing to find, and I just feel like a nice hello from my grandma as I was like in a thrift store in Vancouver, Washington. She also worked on a huge variety of projects, from paper doll books to the Planet of the Apes. She would tackle it. She'd be like, yeah, it sounds fun, let's do it. She also raised 4 kids during the 1950s and 1960s. She was a full-time illustrator, again, from the time she was 23, and she did it until she literally could not see well enough to draw at the age of 78. She had macular degeneration, so she just eventually lost her sight, but she was drawing like right up until she couldn't do it anymore. She also had a really fun sense of fashion. She had fun with color, with patterns, with unusual pairings. She wore what she liked and she didn't care about trends. I loved her house. Her walls were jammed with family photographs and meaningful objects. She was also one of my favorite shopping partners too. We really had a good time. My walls are also jammed. I feel like I take a lot of her maximalist tendencies and employ with glee, essentially. She really kind of gave me permission to do this. No color was too much. No pattern was too garish, as long as you were having fun with it. I always think, what would grandma do whenever I'm doing an installation, a window display, or working on an illustration? How do I organize chaos? How do I overwhelm but still inform, which is really important to me? I want my work to communicate. I want people to feel like they can be engaged with it. I want it to be accessible. I want it to be welcoming, but I also want it to be kind of crazy and fun too. How can there be more color, more things, elicit more engagement, take up space? Always want to be taking up space. And I totally thought, what would grandma do when I was setting up outlet? Organized chaos is honestly what I strive for. These are images of my bursting at the seams zine library. And believe it or not, it is organized. I know where things are in here. And I love more. And again, I feel so fortunate that I was able to have a few years working as an illustrator while my grandma was still alive, so we could compare notes and share the same profession. I love my grandma's work ethic. I love feeling like I am channeling her attitude when I sit at her drawing table every day. And I've been sitting at that desk since 2012, working mostly happily and drawing for a healthy list of clients. This is just kind of a quick overview of some of the commercial illustration work that I do for a variety of clients. Got New York Times spot illustrations. I've done shirts for Uniqlo. There's an editorial for Teen Vogue. I work in publishing and editorial. I love drawing stuff for textiles. There's some editorial stuff for the New York Times. I'm drawn on a motorcycle head on motorcycle helmets. Like it's basically like, give me a surface and let me do it. Okay, let me do my thing. However, if you knew me 20 years ago or so, you would know that, I kind of actually hated drawing. I was creative, but drawing was actually my least favorite way to make stuff. I loved drawing when I was little, like most of us, but around 4th grade, my love for making marks was absolutely destroyed by the fear of making a mistake, which I think is very common. Sadly, though, this way of communicating for myself was zapped from existence, and I looked for other ways to express myself. So I actually decided to draw in my mid-20s when I stupidly racked up $25,000 of credit card debt and felt totally powerless. It was then when I decided that I would draw, but as a form of punishment. I decided to draw all my credit card statements until they were paid off. So when I started my credit card project, I hated drawing so much, I actually considered it a form of punishment. Drawing my credit card statements was the equivalent to writing, "I will not be stupid with money," over and over again on a chalkboard. This project wasn't fun, but that wasn't the point. However, as this project progressed and my debt went down, I started to actually take pleasure in making repetitive lines, drawing type, and focusing on the subject at hand. So 2 years into the credit card project, I wanted to draw something else in addition to my frustrating credit card statements. And I kind of tricked myself into actually enjoying drawing. And that is where my daily purchase drawing project was born. So on February 5th, 2006, I established a set of rules: only draw in black pen, only draw on white individual sheets of 8x10 paper. If you start to mess up, you have to go with the mess, no erasing, no do-overs. And you had to draw something that you purchased every day. And I also had to share it in order to make myself accountable, so I would keep doing this. And at that time in 2006, the way that I shared my drawings was on a little platform called Flickr. And that's when I also decided to start making zines too. So I had zine subscribers at that time as well. These drawings were simple and of everyday objects. You know, I've got a roll of aluminum foil, water bowl for my dog, you know, just everyday objects, really investigating the everyday and what's around us. This process really made me incredibly aware of how much passive consumption occurs in our daily lives and how little attention we pay to the everyday items. I would have folks come up to me and be like, especially like with passive consumption, where people would be like, well, I didn't buy anything today. I'm like, well, what was your rent? You know, are you paying your rent? Break that down. You know, you bought, you know, this day of rent, or what about your electricity bill? Like even the most staunch, like anti-consumption person, we're still consuming. And it's just about kind of slowing down and thinking about what are these things? What are these items? And we really, again, we don't pay a lot of attention to that. So anyway, I kept up with this process and I drew and drew and drew. And 4,000 daily drawings later, I can safely say that I love to draw. My early drawings, however, were not confident. Sometimes drawing with my hands felt like I was drawing with my feet. However, I kept going and I kept sharing. This is really how my style kind of developed. It was a wonky style because remember, I told myself that I couldn't start over again. If a line was kind of going crazy, I had to go with that line. So I started feeling very shaky and my style was very wonky, but through the years, it became more of what I like to call a confident wonk. And my hands stopped feeling like feet. I was documenting my life through my stuff and I became hooked on this process. Automated drawing strategies are a crucial part of my creative practice. And this daily drawing project, which will turn 18 in a couple months, really led to my career in illustration and lots of other ways of making. It's important to me that I'm always thinking of new products to create and share an outlet, from washi tape to sticker sheets, from tote bags to ceramics to prints and cards to zines to funny fabric banners that I make with my mom to clunky and awkward paper mache. I am so thankful for this daily drawing project because it set me up in creating systems for making. However, there was still something that eluded me after years of drawing. I still had never figured out how to keep a dang sketchbook. And honestly, here's kind of where we are with the thesis of this talk. I strongly think anyone can enjoy the benefits of keeping a sketchbook, whether you consider yourself an illustrator or not, okay? I think the benefits of slowing down on the daily and recording your day has immense benefits that you will see if you start this process. However, it wasn't until I was 40 and well into my illustration journey and many drawing projects that I actually made myself finish a sketchbook. And now I can't stop. And I wish I had kept going with my many failed attempts years ago. But what I didn't realize was that I was my biggest enemy and I just needed to get out of my dang head. For drawing, the hard part is the start. But for keeping a sketchbook, the hard part is to keep going and to finish it. Sketchbooks always freaked me out. I remember I took one drawing class in college and we had a sketchbook assignment and I got a C- on it. And I was like, I suck at this. I'm never doing this. I'm so bad at this. And I mean, I did suck at it. And also, sorry, I think the teacher kind of sucked too. Honestly, like it was not an inspiring environment. And he basically like gave all this like super critical feedback on my sketchbook, but like really no encouragement or strategies for keep going. And again, don't want to blame it on the teacher. I'm a teacher. I understand that, but I definitely feel that I could have used some help as a 19-year-old kid there who had just gotten a C- on a sketchbook assignment. Anyway, I loved buying sketchbooks, loved buying them. But again, actually finishing one was another story. The promise of a fresh page was way more seductive than actually filling up a book with the bits and pieces of the everyday. I put so much pressure on the blank page and quickly abandoned many, many sketchbooks because of the pressure. I didn't want keeping a sketchbook to be stressful. I didn't want it to be another thing on my to-do list. However, before discovering the absolute joy of keeping a sketchbook, I really discovered the absolute joy of making zines. And you may ask, what the heck is a zine? Well, here's a handy slide that gives you an overview of what a zine is. It's the key for this, though. It is handmade, locally distributed. Zines let you share your thoughts and ideas with the world. They are the perfect homemade container to share your comics, your photographs, your stories, your passions with others. Zines give you permission to see the thing that you want to see in the world. I made my first zine when I was 19 and wanted to make sure that more people were able to read my friend Zach's poetry. And I haven't stopped making these amazing permission-giving objects since. I may have made zines for my multiple drawing projects, for photo essays, to honor collections, to tell and share stories, and I've made zines with other people and groups. I adore this way of making, and even though my work has evolved and changed over the last 20 years, me using the zine as a container to share ideas has been a total constant. I could start my own freaking zine factory, but I was totally unable to fill up a sketchbook. And starting a sketchbook was something that I was a pro at. And I had done over and over and over again for many, many, many years. And again, how do people do this? I really wanted to fully invest using it to record lists, ideas, drawings, bits of paper, inspirational ephemera. I was going to do this. So in 2014, I allowed myself to take a break from this daily drawing project. I stopped on the 8-year. I had been doing it for 8 years. I focused on freelance work, teaching. I opened up Outlet in 2017. I was busy. I was making work I was excited about, but honestly, I missed the daily documentation practice. I missed the time that I had to myself. And as a 40th birthday gift to myself, I returned to my daily drawing practice on August 12th, 2017. I kept the same set of rules that I had previously created for this project, but I added a new one. These drawings were to be kept in sketchbooks, which previously they had been on separate sheets of paper, with the goal of filling book after book with not just my daily drawings, but with scraps of paper, lists, watercolors, pencil drawings, and whatever else I wanted to gather to document my life through a sketchbook. And with this new rule system set in place, I altered my relationship to keeping a sketchbook. So I finally started and finished my first sketchbook after 20 years of feeling defeated by one. And let me tell you, it's damn satisfying to see the sketchbook stack grow and grow. I sent one to the gallery, and it was weird. Had never sent one off in the mail. So I hope it made it there, because I'm going to be really sad if it got lost. I didn't realize the emotional connection that I had to just like one of my many sketchbooks as I like sent it off into the world. When I like deposited the priority mailbox, I was like, oh, there it goes. So anyway, I hope you enjoy the sketchbook. It's there. It's just one of many, but it's one of my babies, and I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. So my new system of working is that almost all my projects, they start in a sketchbook for me and they end up in a zine to share. The combination of the two are a powerful tool for making and sharing work. And speaking of zines, I started an every other month mail club where subscribers received a zine filled with 2 months of my daily drawings, as well as photographs, a bit of writing, and a new sticker or a print or a piece of like thrift store ephemera. I know that the honors students got copies of my last 2 volumes of my zine, and it was just a random assortment of things. And I love this. I started this back up again during the pandemic in 2020. And I hadn't sent out zines in the mail since the early 2000s. And this project is one of my favorite projects to do. And it feels like a big bowl of mac and cheese for me, which means I love it. It's a total comfort way of working for me. Here's some covers. I print them all on my resos at Outlet, and there's some inside spreads of the zine. And then there's some, some writing, some photographs, things like that. And then there's also just like them arriving. I love it when people show me that their zines came. This also gives me a complete excuse to like purchase 500 cheeseburger wrappers and put my zines in them. Like, it's really, again, I find it as a very fun excuse to look for flat objects that amuse me, that I can send in the mail. Like my last one was a bunch of like recipe cards from Betty Crocker that I found in the 1970s. And I challenged anyone who received the recipe card to make that recipe, because they are all pretty truly horrifying. But I love looking, I love slowing down, I love rummaging, and I love finding especially objects and multiples that I can share with my zine subscribers. If I could wave a magic wand and didn't have any responsibilities, I would just make elaborate packages to send out in the mail. I would just make zines all the time, and I would read memoirs by comedians. That's what I would do. Those are the things that I would do. Like, that's what I love. That's what I love to do. So, but you know what? I've got responsibilities, and sometimes we have to do things that we don't like to do. I'm just really fortunate that I'm still able to fit this stuff in here, and I have a good time with it. Anyway, I did, however, find I recently moved last year to a new house, and I was going through a bunch of sketchbooks from the early 2000s that I just like filled a couple pages and then just like abandoned into the ether, essentially. But I found a page, and it was a to-do list. And it was one of my many failed attempts at keeping a sketchbook from when I was 23 in the year 2000. And it's just I wish makes me wish that I had kept more of my sketchbooks, because it's funny to kind of, again, look backwards. And then I truly believe like reflecting, looking backwards and connecting those dots so you can move forward is like a huge thing for anyone who's creative. And this is a paper trail, and it's so ridiculous. And it's also just like the inside of my 23-year-old brain, where it's like goals starting April 3rd, 2001, exercise, get up at 6:15 or 6:10, run/walk 1 mile, jump rope. Never did any of that. Still don't do any of that. 2, get computer. And then I don't know what's up with my numbering system here, because then I go down to 1 again. Keep better contact with people, work on portfolio, make own projects, produce. Don't be lazy, always productive, eat better, more fruit, less pop. And at the bottom, after I'd like yelled at myself for half a paragraph, I go, be happy with self. Start keeping a journal. And it's just, it's like, yes, some of those goals are still there. And I look back at a 23-year-old, I'm 46 right now, and I'm like, God, you were hard on yourself. But there's like core things in there that are still so important to the things that I do every day, which is like, I always want to be keeping people together. I want to be keeping in contact with people. And I'm always kind of like, oh, did you check on this person? Oh, I need to keep in contact with that person. And again, a zine is a great way to kind of do that too. And I'm always like, thinking about different things, wanting to do different projects. It's just, it's so, and again, like that desire, that last line, start keeping a journal. I feel like that 23-year-old would be so stoked that I've got almost 20 years of daily drawings where I'm like, I did keep a journal, but it looked so differently than what you thought it was going to look like. Like, it wasn't something where I'd sit down and like take my pen out and write down my daily thoughts. It manifested itself in a way that was true and real to me, which was documenting the things that I purchased and telling the story of my weirdo life through my boring stuff. And I love it, and I'm addicted to it. So it's okay if you have abandoned a bunch of sketchbooks. It's okay to have so many starts and so few finishes. This process looks different for everyone. It looks different for everyone, but hopefully in these next few minutes, I can offer a bit of permission giving to help you pave your unique path and maybe help kick off some good creative habits. Or maybe you've already done that and you just need someone to go, yeah, you're doing it, keep going. Because it's so essential that you figure out what your story is so you can keep moving and making on your own journey. Because I deeply believe that everyone has a story to tell. It's just figuring out, well, how am I going to do it? What is my story? And so this is where I kick it back to the ultimate queen, illustrator and educator, Linda Berry. I'm going to quote her because she is a quotable genius. Okay. So Linda Berry says that drawing is a language. It's hard to understand what that really means until you've spoken and listened to it enough in a reliable and regular way. Starting a sketchbook practice is the best way to begin a reliable and regular way. So even back up from there, the word drawing, I think, is intimidating. I actually call it mark making with my graphic design students because so many of them are freaked out by being like, I can't draw. I'm like, we're making marks. And I fully believe that everyone is capable of communicating fluently in this visual language. Also, creating something from nothing makes us feel productive, and that helps us feel good about ourselves. And also, being present in the moment and focused during a drawing session can be a feeling similar to meditation. I fully believe that. Fully believe that. Being by yourself with your pens and your paper for just 15 to 20 minutes a day and just blocking out everything else, it feels like meditation to me. I need to do it or I will feel stressed. And I love that process. So I'm going to talk a little bit about finding inspiration. And my inspiration is really rooted in the objects that we use every day. And I want to share with you some examples of making from the everyday that I have employed in the past. And honestly, feel free to use these ideas. Seriously, open source, go for it. But also search for content that is truly meaningful to you. Telling your story will make the process that much more rich, and you will be so much more invested in the outcome if you are cultivating your own voice. And the best way to cultivate your own voice is through making piles of not so good stuff. And then guess what? That's going to yield some pretty good stuff. From the piles of crap will come some good stuff, I promise, but you got to make those piles. So here's some ideas to start making piles. I have this ongoing project where I just paint my record collection. If I'm like, I need something to paint, I'm going to sit down and I'm going to start painting my record collection. It's like a built-in structure. So I don't have to waste time being like, what am I going to do? I'm like, oh, you can paint one of your records. Okay, great. Good warm up. I also like kind of going on scavenger hunts in my own house. And so like this image of all the hairbrushes, where I'm like, I'm going to find all the hairbrushes in my house. And I'm just going to paint and like caption all the hairbrushes in my house. And sometimes you purchase things that you feel a little guilty about spending too much on, and also you never use them. The best thing to do is to draw it. So at least you've made a painting out of it. Because these clogs, I did pay too much for them and I wore them only once and I no longer have them, but I have this painting. And that is what has survived over the years, basically. I also used to have a real big fear of drawing out in public. So I would challenge myself to just draw out in public. And guess what? No one pays attention to you. No one's looking at you. So don't let that stop you from doing the things that you want to do, because no one cares. So if you want to draw in public, go draw in public. So there's some like just different restaurant drawings. That's me doing an ice cream cone study at IKEA on a Saturday night. Just fun stuff. Again, always based around objects. This is another image of where I decided I was going to draw the buttons that I could find in my closet. Another one where I was going to draw all of I love to have a moist lip. I'm sorry. I have lots of lip balms. I have lots of chapsticks. I have lots of colored tints. So I was like, this is ridiculous. Let's draw this stuff. I also draw the stuff that I'm throwing away. And so I had a series for a while where before I would like give something to the Goodwill or give something away or put something into the trash, I would do a painting of it and share. Also, Craigslist is a visual feast for folks that are wanting to look for information and images to draw. I could do an entire talk about why I think Craigslist is like the perfect website on the internet, but I'll spare you because I do think that Craigslist is great if you're looking for collections and patterns. And I had this process for a while where I would just think of an item, scroll through Craigslist, find more, and draw them. So I've got bikes that were for sale, travel trailers that were for sale, sunglasses that were for sale, carpets that were for sale. And then during the pandemic, when we were all on Zoom all the time, I was still in a lot of meetings. I would sit there and I would do quick watercolor drawings of people that I was on Zoom with. And that actually is literally one of the only things I miss about Zoom is that I could secretly draw people while I was on Zoom and have my own drawing collection. You can't really do that when you're in an active meeting face to face. People don't look upon that very fondly. They don't think that's cute. But on Zoom, you can do that. So anyway, and then also I just kind of played and had fun with it. I got messy in my sketchbook. And that was something that I think that I had to give myself permission to do. Like you can just get crazy and get silly. I love to keep written lists. And I also have this thing that I call a mark making library in my sketchbook as a resource for future drawings and zine ideas. This is a sample of what I like to call one of my mark making libraries. And I also think making marks is a great way to warm up. I use my daily drawing project as a warm up before I dive into a bigger drawing project, for example. And I'm a huge believer of that it's really good to stretch before working out, and making marks is the same thing as stretching before a big workout. And also you don't have to draw at all, okay? I think using your sketchbook to hold images from magazines, newspapers, receipts, whatever other ephemera crosses your path that intrigues you during that day. The key is just to start, okay? And I have always found a blank piece of paper a very intimidating thing. It's so scary that even when I was making the slide, I couldn't just keep it blank. I had to draw lines on it. But creating a library of marks and creating a running list of drawing ideas helps make a scary blank sketchbook way less scary. And again, I just am always writing down drawing ideas. Just as I love making a library of marks, having a library of ideas to access makes developing a drawing practice way more accessible. It turns something that might be stressful, like coming up with ideas, into something enjoyable. Drawing in my sketchbook for me has turned into my daily zone of relaxation, which is something I think we all should like indulge in. You should have a daily moment of just doing something that you enjoy, okay? The feeling of making something is also very satisfying, especially when you might feel like that, what is time? This feels fake. A lot of things feel out of my control. At least you have control over what you put in your dang sketchbook. And please remember a few making mantras, like experiment, okay? Don't overthink it. Really, really resist the urge to erase. Find the good stuff in what you might think are mistakes. My whole drawing style is based on not starting over and just going with that wonky line. And just to kind of show you how you might apply one of your marks to inform the drawing that you are making, this is a mark from one of my sketchbooks, and here it is directly applied to a pattern in a drawing of a plant that, well, it used to be on my desk. It's dead now, but I still have a drawing of the plant. And again, you can see I'm like, okay, what is the pattern I want to use? I'm looking at my mark making inventory, and then I'm like, okay, I'm going to use that mark. And this is an example of how many marks applied to an entire series of drawings might look like. This was part from a series where I would draw other people's plants. They would send me images of their plants, and I would do a drawing. I would do a plant portrait for them. Anyway, I had a lot of those things. It was fun. So it's important too that you are just looking for items to draw that are within arm's reach. What's in your bag? What's in there? What's in there that you could draw? Think about your day. What object has best symbolized your day? Spend time with that object. Think about what that object means to you. Draw it and maybe write a few lines about its meaning. And again, remember, it's about experimentation and fun. The more you practice and work at something, the better your instincts become. You have to explore lots of tools and materials to find the right combo for you. And this is highly important. And I talk about this a lot with my students. It's important that you are making for you, okay? But it's also fun to share what you are making, especially if you find yourself enjoying the lines and marks and ideas that you are communicating through your pen and paper. And here's a list of ways that you can share if you need a list, okay? You know, I share a lot of stuff online. I have a zine. Other platforms send stuff in the mail, have a newsletter. Again, it's a great kind of way to keep yourself accountable to making, and maybe some other people enjoy it too. But it's so important that you are making for you, And if other people happen to enjoy it, that's great too. So anyway, thank you for spending this past 51 minutes and 22 seconds with me and being open to maybe cultivating a daily sketchbook habit. Figuring out a framework for maintaining a creative practice while we travel the ups and downs of the world really helps bring order to chaos as well. Working on a daily sketchbook is actually really great for people who feel like they are too busy with literally everything. But making art will make you saner and happier. I swear. Setting aside 15 minutes a day to cultivate a daily habit, it can be done. And art making can fit into even the most crazy schedules, because making things makes you feel good, and we need all of the good feelings that we can get, okay? So making things makes you feel good. And that's it. That's what I got. And thank you everyone so much for hanging out and for listening to me kind of just like yell at you on this screen as I'm above you. And now I'm just like talking into a quiet room. I love it. It's so good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Sophia. That's really sweet in the chat. Thank you. I appreciate that. Oh, thank you, Leslie, in the chat. Thank you.
I'm assuming you would entertain some questions from the audience if they come up and post them to you. So if you could come up here so Kate can see you, it might be a little easier. You can.
Where's the camera?
The camera's here, so yeah. It's a little strange sometimes.
I ask it to the choir. So I'm just wondering like how you started, like, you know, like from starting to make art to now you're like a professional artist. Like, how did you start making art for money, and how were you able to make a career out of that? Like, how were you able to make that career?
That is always the $1 million question. And I say to all people who want to sustain a life of creativity, I am a big champion of multiple revenue streams, because it's never going to come from just one place, essentially. And the way that I actually started making a career out of the things that I did was really honestly through that daily drawing project and sharing with that. And even to back it up, like, it definitely was not an overnight situation whatsoever. I started kind of this investigation of personal documentation based around my consumption back in the year 2001, actually. And it was when I was in grad school, and I had this website that I called obsessiveconsumption.com. And it was a brand that I essentially built that was based around me recording all of the photographs and receipts and things that I purchased, like everything. So I started that when I was in my mid-20s, and this was before social media, really. This website was built in Flash. Every Sunday I would upload like these, like I had my very first digital camera. It was 2.1 megapixels. It was like so low res. And I would upload photos of everything that I purchased, and then I would just write about it. And people started to come to my website to look at it. And before I knew it, after consistently posting every single week, I had gathered kind of a following of other people that were interested in this little weird project that I had started. And then I started incorporating features on that website where I had other people share the things that they had purchased. And I had a whole kind of like area where people talked about like what their favorite object was. And I created this online community in 2001, 2002, 2003, and 2004 that was all based around the emotions behind our stuff. And that was my first online store. And again, I wasn't drawing. This was all photographs. I did installation work. I did a lot of gallery work around that time. And it was really kind of like that planted the seeds. That was my first mailing list. Like I would like email everyone on Sunday. And it was just, that was where I was me kind of like practicing, number one, kind of like figuring out how to work as a creative person, and also figuring out how to create communities, whether that's in person or online, and then kind of cultivating that and making sure that people were feeling like they were included in these processes too, because I didn't want it just to be this weird navel gazing of me being like, look at my Subway sandwich, you know? So it was just, I wanted to be able to have a conversation with folks about their relationship to their objects. And from there is where I started actually applying to, because while I was doing that, I started teaching, and I discovered that I actually really like teaching a lot. And I kind of chose the path to not go be a graphic designer at an agency, because I was learning these things about me. And at that point I was like, I don't think I want to do this. I don't think I'd be happy doing this, but I actually really like teaching and I like working with people. And so I started applying for assistant professor jobs, and I got my first job as an assistant professor at Mississippi State University in 2004. And from there, that's also where I started the credit card project, was in 2004, because that was where it really came very evident to me. I thought I had my big girl job, and then all of this credit card debt kind of came at me, and I realized that I wasn't able to pay it. And there was an amazing amount of shame, because I had just spent 2-3 years with this, online website talking about all the things that, the things that we've been purchasing, the items and objects of our life. And I had been accumulating all this credit card debt. So I used that same audience that I had kind of gathered from that first project. And that's who I shared my credit card statements with. And then it just builds from there. And then from the credit card statements, I kind of unlocked like, oh, I love drawing. And so this was like another skill that I kind of had in my toolbox now that I was able to employ. And then that's where the daily drawing project came. And at that point, when I started daily drawings, that was in 2006. I already had folks that were creative directors, that were art directors, that worked at agencies that had been following me. But they were like, what the hell do we do with Kate? We can't hire her to do anything. She's drawing her credit card statements. I really like what she's doing, but that's not anything we can use. But it was when I started doing my daily drawings that those folks that had been, they were like, oh, now I know what to do with her. And so in 2007, I started doing editorial illustration. I was asked to illustrate a book that was really near and dear to my heart. My friend Faith Levine is the director for this movie, this documentary at the time, which was called Handmade Nation, which is about the rise of DIY, which was a whole scene that I was part of, sewing $ pillows and like making like pennants and things like that. But she asked me if I could illustrate the book that was being put out by Princeton Architectural Press. And I was like, sure, I've never done that before. Let's go for it. And I learned a lot from that process. And I had a really good working experience with the art director at Princeton Architectural Press. And then that led me to working with more editorial work. And then that led me to getting my own book about my daily drawings in 2010 to be put out by Princeton Architectural Press. And then that led to more freelance work. And so it's just, you got to keep, the biggest thing that I think has benefited me over the years is that I just keep sharing the stuff that I'm doing. And I fortunately have not, either it's just a little bit of stupidity on my part. But I have a tendency to not overthink stuff. I just kind of put it out before maybe it's fully cooked and just see what happens, and get feedback on it. And I feel like I've always benefited from me being a little bit quick to jump the gun on things and a little bit too quick to say yes to things without fully thinking it through and then being like, oh no, what did I do? And then kind of fully committing to that bit, I guess, and just kind of like making it happen and asking the questions and communicating. I've always prided, is that a word? Prided? I've always been proud of the fact that I feel like I'm a pretty good communicator. The things that I teach now at Portland State, it's not illustration. I don't teach illustration classes. I've never really taught an illustration class. But the things that I teach at Portland State and the things that I think are actually really beneficial to students is how to work in groups, how to communicate, how to get your ideas from your paper to like in front of people, how to reach out to folks, how to present yourself as a person who wants to be putting creative things into the world, and how maybe you can get money from that too. And so I do a lot of professional practice classes. I run the senior portfolio, kind of everything we do here. I run the in-house design studio that we have here at PSU. I do a lot of like creative partnerships and bring in a lot of community stuff here that goes back to me loving to do events and organizing people and like getting people stoked on stuff. For better, for worse, I've always been a really good cheerleader. So it's like, I will get people's asses moving to places because it's just better with people. It's better with people. So anyway, don't know if that answers your question, but it's a long road to hoe. And I think that it's essential that you actually are enjoying the thing that you're doing, because at the end of the day, you put your stuff out there and maybe it doesn't get any likes. Maybe it doesn't sell. You don't want that to destroy your desire to make. You've got to be enjoying the things that you're doing. And even if you do put something out there, you upload something to your store, you go to a market and you don't sell very much, you want to be happy with the stuff that you're producing. And I do definitely feel like doing lots of different things, the money will come. The money will come. Yeah, you can't put all your eggs in one basket for sure. So, and then you just got to be like a dog with a bone. you got to be a little crazy. Hi.
Hi.
I'm standing behind you like a creep.
It seems like your object studies are like both rooted in mindfulness, but also kind of giving a new life to your history, or like concreting them. Words aren't coming. But would you say your practice is a celebration of the present or the past?
Oh, that's such a good question. That's such a good question. And I feel like this is one of the reasons that I enjoy doing talks, and it kind of forces you to have to think back and reflect. And I feel like a lot of we don't really give ourselves time to slow down and reflect on the things that we do. And I feel like you can learn a lot from doing that. Because I think I mentioned this in the talk too. It's like when you have to like slow down, think about the things that you've made, you're able to see things in a different light, and you can start connecting those dots so you can move forward and make different things too. And so when I first started this project, I feel like it was to keep myself accountable, to maybe, make sure that I wasn't spending money on dumb things, to basically kind of like document in that way. But after doing this for so long, I think of it, especially after having Hank 5 years ago too. Like I don't keep like scrapbooks for him. He doesn't have any baby books, but like, boy, he has a documentation of his first 5 years, because my practice is very much about documenting my life through the things that I engage with, and through slowing down, and for recording those memories. And so I feel very fortunate that I have this kind of weird archive of not just my life, but like his life too. And it's not just his life, it's an archive of like the the people that I engage with, my family, my friends. I love stumbling over ticket stubs that I've drawn of like experiences that you can't really draw because you don't have a tangible object from it, and the only thing that you have from that experience is maybe just the receipt of the experience, and I want to be sure that I'm recording that too. And so I'm really thankful that that it is part mindfulness. And I never, when I started this, there's no way in hell that I would have thought that this is my mindful practice. But like now it definitely is, especially with me coming back to it after having a 3-year break. I was able to have a different relationship with it. When I came back to it in 2017 at 40, at that point, I honestly, like, I was like, I'm not going to have kids. I'm doing this because I really just want to, I want to do this. I miss this time of documenting. And then I had Hank a year later, and I was like, wow, I'm actually really glad that I have this archive. So it's all of the things. That's all of the things. And I think it's something that I would do whether nobody subscribed to my zine, or no one like paid me to do stuff. Like I definitely feel like it's a chip in me that it's like I have to do these things because I want to do them. I need to do them. And I feel very fortunate that I have something like that drives me, that I think about during the day. I'm very thankful that I've got that kind of creative fire, basically. And that's something that I try to help my students discover, navigate while they're in these classes too. Because I mean, sometimes you're in a misplaced major, and I will have these conversations with students where I'm like, I can tell that you're not enjoying this. Let's have a conversation about what it is that you do like, and kind of like helping them have these conversations so they can talk through the things that are in their head, the things that are in their heart, and the things that they actually do want to be doing. Because I do think so much of this, and to go back to the mindfulness question that you had, I think it's about being an active participant in your life. And I think it's so easy to not be. And I find drawing and documenting to be my way of being active and present in my own life. And I hope to kind of have that happen with my students too. So again, another very long response to your very excellent and clear question. So anyway, thank you.
Right. My question is, when you do your zines, are you doing them for yourself and sharing them, or are you considering your audience?
I am okay. So this is where I put on, like, when I have my illustrator hat on, whereas I have a client and there's a very clear directive of what they want. I will be absolutely considering the audience and like what it is that they've asked me to do. I do not go rogue and be like, I think this is what you want. But I mean, it's like, that's a different thing. But like with my zines, I definitely consider the audience, because I want them to have a fun experience. Like I want them to open up the package and be like, what is Kate sending this month? What is in here? And like to be reading the intro pages. And again, that's very like, it's very stream of conscious. It's very like whatever happens to be on my mind. It's a very personal thing. So in that way, it's like I'm considering the audience's experience, but I am dictating the content that's going into the zines. So I want them to have fun reading through it, and maybe having some relation to their own lives, but it's still very much, it's like I'm driving that car, but when I am working with a client, it's definitely more of a collaboration. Like when they give me feedback, I incorporate that feedback. When they ask me to do something, I do that thing. And I do think that there's definitely, and I think that is what makes for being a successful illustrator too. And I think that also too, for the folks in the audience that are wanting to kind of like go down the path of being an illustrator, I think you have to have your personal projects that you feel like you have control over, that also garners attention, that maybe gets some folks to reach out to you to do illustration work. But then you also have to be doing definitely more of a collaboration with the client as well. And again, this is why it's like, I'm always like with illustrators where it's like, hey, do your own work, sell your own work, have your client work, think about licensing, think about how you're distributing, making products. Like you want to have these like multiple ways of working and making, because I definitely think if you are entering the illustration field being like, I only want to do editorial illustration, you are going to burn yourself out. And I think you want to be able to have your creative practice sustain you and fill you and not drain you, so you don't have the energy to do the thing that you once really loved.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Are there other questions?
So I found actually creative writing because like I wanted to sort of like make a big project, like write a book or something. But now I'm hearing the advice from you and other people that you should sort of find you should sort of start with sort of low pressure, sort of like just build up a portfolio of sort of like crap work, you said,
Yes.
But I'm wondering, after you've done that for a while, at a certain point, can you or do you put the pressure back on yourself to say, okay, now it's crunch time, I'm gonna go write a book, or I'm gonna go do a big project, and
Well, yeah. I mean, I think those things can lead to it. Those things they're like warm-up exercises for sure. I think if you were to sit down, what's your name?
Chase.
Chase, is that right? Chase, if you were to wake up this morning and be like, I gotta write the great American novel, I'm gonna do it. Today is the day. Let's do it, Chase. It's time to write the great American novel. That's a lot of pressure to put on yourself, and I think if you were to kind of like bite size it and start getting some like rough drafts out, start with some writing exercises, some practice, getting involved in that. I think you can do multiple things at once. And I think because you are maybe you're writing a zine, or maybe you're writing a column for a local newspaper, or maybe you are editing a literary magazine, or maybe you're getting yourself involved with the writing community and organizing a writing series with other writers, like kind of exposing yourself to different ways of making and working. That's going to give you the energy to work up to writing that great American novel. And maybe that first kind of like draft doesn't come out the way that you want it to be. It won't be such a disappointment to you because you've got these other kind of irons in the fire. Basically, you have a successful reading series that you've organized. You've got a good writing community that you've built up because you've been reaching out to other writers that are working in ways that are inspiring to you, that they can help give you feedback on this first draft. Like, you have built yourself a network of support that is going to help you sustain this life of creativity, and it's going to help you give the fuel so you can write that big book project too. I think it's just about building that good foundation so you can continue to work on those bigger projects too. You got to build a good foundation to support you, because being a creative is really, really, really hard. And if you don't have a good foundation, it makes it really harder. So I don't know if that answers your question, but I think having multiple things is really good. And it ultimately helps set you up for success.
And just to clarify,
Yes.
you still try and find like that low pressure sort of flow state even when you're working on that big project?
Oh, because that's the fun thing. That's the win, you know, like that's the sense of feeling like you've accomplished something, you know, like you're not going to start and finish your great American novel in one day, but you can start and finish. Maybe you're writing a couple sentences, or you're writing a poem that you share every day or something like that. At least you feel like okay, I've started this and I finished it. I've done this thing. And then that's going to give me kind of like the springboard into doing the other thing too.
I think we have time for one last question. Are there any others?
Hello.
Hi.
So one of the things I was wondering about, especially as we read the little signs that we were given, was obviously you buy a lot of things. How often do you go back through those, look at something that you included in them and go, wow, that ended up being a really terrible purchase, and I
Oh, like every day. Every day. We buy a lot of dumb stuff. I mean, it's and I think that's something, it's kind of universal. No matter how hard you research something, you know, it's like, oh, I mean, I recently I didn't draw this, but it's like I purchased, I got scammed by an Instagram ad for some jumpsuits that I thought looked amazing, and they finally arrived and it was like a Halloween costume. It was like totally ridiculous. I'm like, God, that's stupid. But it's yeah, I look back and I'm like, well, I didn't really need that. But it's and I think that's kind of a universal thing, you know. Yeah, I look back quite a bit and I'm like, yeah, that was stupid. So I don't know. I even 20 years into it, I don't make wise decisions.
Hey, thank you so much for this lovely discussion and for sharing your enthusiasm, your amazing skills. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you. And thanks to the folks on Zoom. I appreciate you coming in for sure.